Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us for our Chakra Talk. This morning we're going to be diving deeper into the root chakra, and we're going to talk about 3 ways to stay grounded in your truth. So last week we talked about reclaiming the roots, and that means literally just like recognizing that we have roots and being aware of our connection to the earth and our connection inside of our bodies. So 2 very important things, and we shared 2 practices for that last week. And so now that we have connected to our roots in our bodies, we're going to talk about what it looks like to be standing in our truth. And I like to use analogies. So we're going to use the analogy of a tree. So if you imagine a tree and it has its roots in the earth and it's standing tall, one thing that's important for the health of the tree is to have nourishing soil. So one thing that we can do, number 1, on how to stand in your truth, is to prepare your soil and keep it nourished. And Shannon's going to tell us a little bit about how to do that.
Yeah, so nourishing your soil can look different to everyone, but basically you need to make sure that you're creating healthy boundaries within yourself. Our root system we don't get to see, but as human beings, for trees we don't get to see them, but as human beings we're able to notice, like, where do we need to stop to keep from something being dangerous? Where do we need to not extend our roots to in order to maintain the health of ourself? And just making sure that the way you're nourishing your body is healthy, that's, your soil. Making sure that you're nourishing yourself with what you're exposing yourself to. So again, it's really just all about boundaries. The boundaries around what you expose yourself to, who you expose yourself to, what you're eating, what you're taking in through media. So it can be many things, but basically just getting quiet and recognizing what boundaries do I need to create within myself, and recognizing. So one thing I've learned is, if you have never known what boundaries are, boundaries may feel like control. They're not meant to be control. They are meant to show us what we are okay with, what we feel is acceptable to take in to ourselves, to nourish ourselves with. So getting quiet, obviously, when we were talking about reclaiming our roots last week, it's really important to get quiet. So get quiet, think about, what are your boundaries? What do you need to nourish yourself with? Food, drink, media, friends, family, whatever it is, you need to think about what nourishes you the most. Yes.
So you create that nourishing soil, and maybe you don't live in your ideal environment. Maybe your tree is not planted in your ideal place, but it's making the best out of what's present for you right now. Yes. So cultivating that soil the best that you can for right now. Then, if you look around in your soil, you notice that you might have some weeds in there. So the second step is to pull up the weeds. So the weeds could be certain distractions that we have in our lives, certain beliefs that we might have about ourselves that are limiting, certain people that might be toxic to us that take our energy. So anything that takes our energy and doesn't feed us, maybe removing those out of our area so that our tree can really gather the nutrients that it needs and not have the energy dispersed elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And recognize that that's always going to keep occurring. No matter how much you nourish yourself, the weeds are always going to be popping up. Sometimes there's a lot of weeds to pull, and sometimes there's not. And that's okay. We just move with the ebbs and flows of life. So you're always going to have to be that constant gardener, pulling up your weeds. Yeah.
Okay, so once you've done that,
that's our second one, right?
That's number 2.
Okay.
Number 3 is surrender. Because there's natural growth, like life moves through us, and so life is guiding our growth. And so we don't have to control everything. but we allow what is naturally within us to be expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're quiet, we recognize what that is. So that's step number 3, is letting yourself bloom. So you've cultivated the space, and then you just let yourself bloom. You tune into what's true for you, and allow that to be expressed. And it organically will, because if you're rooted in your own truth, then the leaves that you produce are going to just be organically authentic to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a natural byproduct.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about that analogy of the tree, a tree doesn't force itself to grow.
You can't. No.
We can't force a tree to grow the way we want it to. Ultimately, the tree has to surrender to the nourishment that it's giving itself, to the cultivation of boundaries around it, and then ultimately life. What's coming at it? You think we always talk about in yoga classes about tree pose, is moving with it. You can't be stoic. You can't control. You have to surrender. And ultimately, you will blossom in your own time with surrender.
Yes.
Yes. And another good thing to remember when you're talking about reclaiming your roots and grounding in your truth is, oftentimes for us as human beings, there will be a difference between who we are and what we present to the world. Unlike a tree. A tree just is a tree. It can't pretend, an azalea can't pretend to be an oak. Right. Or, a fir can't pretend to be a pine, whatever. So we need to find that same authenticity within ourselves. So we got to let the space go,
right.
Come into alignment with our true nature. So who you are, we get quiet, we reclaim our truth, we reclaim our roots, and who we say we are to others, that's got to end up being in alignment. We got to let go of all that other stuff. If it means you slough off a bunch of bark that you don't need anymore, you do it, so that you can then be who you actually are.
And this journey and this path that we're on, that's exactly what we're doing. That's what life wants us to do, is to come into that alignment.
Yeah.
So we're all on the journey towards it.
We are.
In one circumstance or another.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank
you.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for our Chakra Talk.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, it's called The Chakra Journey. And we also have an Instagram page. And you can subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe for the YouTube channel as well, so you can get our talks as they come out each week.
Yeah. And share it with friends. Let people know, that you want them to be part of your community. We can all support one another.
We'll be beautiful trees.
Yes.
Together.
You decide what tree you are. We talk about it.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
All right. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a great
Namaste,
day.
guys.
Namaste.